Once upon a time, there was a little boy who dreamed of traveling all around the world. That little boy was me, Anthony Lebedo. He wanted to write interesting stories and take beautiful pictures. And when he grew up, he studied and worked hard and risked much to follow his dreams. He trekked through the Middle East. There he saw spectacular Roman ruins and experienced a different culture while witnessing the rise and effects of globalization. He journeyed to Turkey in a quest to investigate the biblical Noah's Ark, rumored to be on Mount Ararat. He experienced the British Army's jungle warfare training in Central America. But some of the stories weren't beautiful. In fact, they were downright horrible. He went to Cambodia to see the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge and their torture headquarters at an old Phnom Penh high school with the innocuous name of S21. In fact, he traveled to more than 40 countries in all, from the Himalayas of Nepal to the desert sands of Namibia, and from the Jade Green Barrier Reef in Belize to the Chobe Nature Reserve in Botswana. I came to realize that the Earth seemed to be spinning faster and faster. The increase of globalization in today's world draws information, ideas, and people together more rapidly than ever before. Even with these advances, countless numbers of people are dissatisfied with today's society. The loss of love is an ongoing social epidemic. Cultural ideals such as honor, generosity, and human kindness seem to be evaporating from our world right before our very eyes. People claim we have become desensitized. They claim we are shallow. They claim we have lost touch with plain, simple humanity in today's media. Well, now people are going to have the chance to see just how beautiful television can be. Because once you peel back the layers of superficiality and sleaze, you'll come to find it really is a beautiful world. Our adventure begins in sunny Central America, a popular destination for global travelers and vacationing tourists alike. This is Guatemala City, capital of the ruggedly beautiful and wildly diverse nation of Guatemala. Guatemala is known as the land of the eternal spring. Although beautiful, it is a troubled nation which has faced civil war, genocide, earthquakes, mudslides, and volcanic eruptions. But is also a place of true beauty, beauty which lay within its people, who soldier on despite great hardships. This is Heather Radu. She's dedicated her life to caring for Guatemala's orphan children. Heather's no ordinary woman. She works for a non-profit adoption agency called All God's Children, which runs orphanages all over the world. Her love and dedication to the needy women and children of Guatemala is as beautiful as their happy endings. How can anyone manage to care for 120 children at once?
No, yo estoy Whitman.
Marlon.
Yo estoy Whitman.
Sí,
Henry.
Sí.
Y yo Selby.
This is All God's Children's most important facility. Second only to China, more children are adopted to the USA from Guatemala than any other country on earth. Finding homes for healthy and adorable babies is usually not a problem as one might imagine. But it's the older children and those who have been through rougher times which are harder to place.
I know Pamela.
She's her favorite.
Hey, Barry.
She is so beautiful. Pamela's a nice name for her. Who gave her that name?
Right, her mom when she brought her.
Hola, Pamela. Yeah.
We have to do like a quarantine. So one of the rooms downstairs, it's usually a therapy room. Right now it's a quarantine room.
Oh, I see.
Because the problem is one kid gets sick, it's like dominoes.
We just hired a full-time doctor that's one of the top pediatricians in the country. And I don't know how we got him.
We
but
got lucky. World Vision wanted him.
World Vision wanted
Came
him,
for us.
and he
Really?
worked for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And so he's full-time, and he's been with us about 2 weeks. And he hired 4 full-time nurses. So there'll always be a nurse in the complex 24 hours a day.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need at least one nurse with 120 children, I guess.
Definitely. Especially all the little ones because when they get sick, they turn fast. Back in December, November, we had rotavirus. The entire orphanage had rota. We had kids going to the emergency room every 5 minutes because they'd get so dehydrated, they'd need an IV. So you'd have like 3 babies go in, 3 babies coming.
Weekend?
It was crazy.
I asked Heather what the most stressful part of her job is.
The most stressful part, finding the right people and hiring the right people. It's really hard. With the ethics, that they aren't going to steal from you, that they're going to have a good work ethic, that they're going to be loyal. That's like, it's almost impossible. So that would be the hardest, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Other than that, you can just, if you have enough people, you can deal with all the issues.
The outwardly peaceful ambiance of the orphanage conceals a difficult and potentially violent battle, which rests just below the surface of Guatemala's so-called adoption laws.
We usually have between 8 to 10 births a month, so that keeps us rolling.
And I will explain to you, when you get out of here, how these babies come to us versus how 95% of all the other babies that are born, how they're getting to the United States.
Yeah, it's very different.
Very different. We're one of the only organizations, if not the only organization in Guatemala, that has a program for birth mothers. And so we're not going out and we don't have a birth factory going on. We're lawyers. It's a huge, huge business here. About 40 million at the last count. And you got women just having babies going into bad foster care and then to the United States. We have a program called Promise of Life, and it's taken us a couple years to get it off the ground. But women are coming to us, and it's not for the money. We're trying to give them jobs, you know, educate them, teach them a trade, whatever we need to do with them. Take care of them during their pregnancy, of course, and then after the fact. So that's how all these babies came. It's a whole different way of doing adoption. Of course, the government knows we're doing this, and they're pretty happy about it. But we have our enemies, and that's why we've got security 24 hours a day.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So who are your enemies?
Well, it would be pretty
Rich
much
lawyers.
all the attorneys that
Attorneys don't want us doing it.
they wouldn't want us grabbing cases, and we're bringing in a different type of way of doing it because basically they have what's called contacts, and those contacts are kind of a web that's been created over the last probably 30 years, and they go out and find mothers and use intimidation to get those mothers to give them their babies, and then they just dump the mother, have the baby, do the legal documents, and that's how 95% of adoptions are in Guatemala. So we didn't want to do it that way. Instead, we wanted to do something like with a real social structure. So as our social structure gets more promoted, it makes them even look worse, and we're taking cases from them, and you know, it's a horrible competitive thing when you're thinking it's about children's lives. But that's been the way Guatemala's been for 30 years.
So you feel that you can change this?
I don't know if I can change it all, but I know that I won't work like that. Because when I've seen how that works, it's horrible. It's like you're dealing with gangs. Guys show up at your door saying, you want this baby, I want $6,000. He's got a tattoo on his hand, and you're like, ah. I've seen that whole thing.
What, the M13 gang in El Salvador or something like that?
I don't know who they are, where they come from, but it's bad. So that's why my whole idea was, even though it's legal to do that in Guatemala, if I could create Promise of Life, I wouldn't have to be involved with that kind of thing. So sure enough, it took me about 1.5 years, but now Promise of Life has regularly 10 to 12 births a month, which keeps everything running and everything going, and we don't have to be involved with those type of people. And the women aren't intimidated, and if they don't want to give their baby for adoption, that's fine. Because like those guys, you say you'll give your baby for an adoption,
There's
and you
no turning
don't.
back.
There's no turning back. You get a bullet in your head. So these women, they're starting to say, hey, we want to go to Promise of Life, because if we go to Promise of Life, we know that they'll help us, but they won't hurt us if we keep our baby.
Like anything else, money always seems to come into play.
And that's what we've met with the Attorney General, and they love what we do, because we're not taking the money and having it offshore in the United States. We're paying wages, nothing's under the table, everything's above board here.
Right, no one's cooking the books, it's all accurate.
It's all accurate, 100%.
And this is in a country that is like, corruption, I would imagine, is endemic.
Yes, it is, and they don't have a social service system to speak of. They don't have orphanages like we saw when we first started 16 years ago in Romania, where they had orphanages, they were just in horrible condition. That's the difference. Here, they don't have them. There's very few
There's
private,
only
public or
six public orphanages and about 200 private, but 200 private that aren't regulated.
Aren't
So there's no
regulated.
children's services division that says, hey, are you doing the right this or right that? There's no one. So you can just open up an orphanage and have kids and do whatever you want. And so there is a lot of people that do have opened up large orphanages, and there's a lot of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse that goes on.
disgusting.
And nobody regulates
But
it.
it's all gonna change.
They say that.
In the next 10 months to a year,
I'll
this
believe
will
it
all
when I see
change.
it.
And that's a long story in itself, but the Hague Treaty for the whole world is upon
Pressuring
us.
Guatemala to be part of it.
And the United States is adopting it. We as an agency in Oregon will be accredited under the Hague. And at some point, the United States will look at Guatemala and say, okay, for our agencies to work with you, you gotta have these guidelines. And the guidelines of the Hague are that all attorneys basically are taken out of the equation.
You can't-
It's
you can't
Hague, it's
profit
government to
kids.
government adoption with a nonprofit,
As
the
the middleman.
intermediary,
Right.
to make sure the process goes smoothly and legally. And so what'll happen is, in the United States, is that all God's children, instead of being licensed by the state of Oregon, all of a sudden, we're gonna be licensed by the United States government. And we'll have that accreditation. And so a lot of agencies, probably in the United States, will give up doing international adoption because it's gonna be a huge process this year. But we're determined we are gonna be one of the ones that do it. And then down here, once they have to accept the Hague, which they will have to do, then they've got to have homes like this for their children to go into, and they don't have any.
So what do? Because there's
So-
only private homes, and then if for some reason they close down adoptions are usually what funds the private homes.
Yes.
And they've got no public homes for the kids to go into, so they've got a huge dilemma.
They have about
No
20,000.
one knows how to handle it.
We have about 20,000 children here. And if adoption closed today, you know, like we spend about $100,000 a month here to run this facility. And if adoption stopped, we'd have to find out how to fund all that. I mean, we do have a donor base, but the lawyers here would just
Eat
say,
it up.
they're
Eat it up.
done. We
Yeah,
don't care, the
say
kids
it.
can go wherever they go. When we came here 6 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to see in the newspaper where a newborn would be wrapped in a blanket tightly and put on the street for a car to roll over it.
Oh,
This was very common here.
In fact, we'd actually have babies that the fire department had rescued from the street, and they just bring the babies here
Right.
after rescuing them from the street. We've had a baby from the street. We had a baby rescued from the jungle and brought here, 2 years old, and she weighed 8 pounds. And they found her on a banana leaf.
2 months old.
No,
No.
2 years
2
old.
years? 2
2
years?
years old. 2
She's-
years
she's
old.
8
down.
pounds?
She
8
was
pounds.
just like skin and bones.
Skin and bone.
And
Another one.
almost dead. Just dead. I mean, way malnourished, way tiny. She didn't look 2.
But where is she now?
She's adopted in America. She's probably 6 years old now.
She's thriving.
7.
And when a baby is adopted, what is the standard
the
fee?
standard fee, $25,000, but then only about 19,000 of that comes down to Guatemala because the rest has to stay in the United States to run the office there. So you've roughly got about 19,000 off of each child that you have to work with. But then you have to handle the whole entire infrastructure of the adoption,
Right.
which is the legal costs, plus the care of the birth mothers. So we've got like exceptional care for kids, exceptional care for the birth mothers, and then the adoption. Whereas our competition, they don't care about the birth mothers, they don't care about the children, so they do very little on that, and they keep all the money for themselves. So the majority of that 19 that they would charge would go into their own pocket. Adopted families, they send down like albums. So this is the album that goes to this baby.
Okay.
So these parents have already come to Guatemala once to visit this baby, and they stay like 2-3 days and
Right.
spend time like just going.
Can you flip some of the pages? And so they want to show the time they spent?
Or they just want to show what their home is in America, like just.
I see. This is Alex. He's 9 years old and was born with cerebral palsy. He spent almost his entire life in a crib. Can he think normally? What do the doctors say?
They say that with the fact that he has no speech, no ability to talk, that it's hard to know exactly mentally where he's at because he has no speech, just sounds.
This is Brenda, a seemingly ordinary 9-year-old Guatemalan girl. Her story is the epitome of what All God's Children and Heather Radu are all about.
She was raped by her.
What's her name? Well, what's her name?
Brenda. She's Brenda.
She's how old?
She's 10 años, Brenda, or 11, 10, 9.
Hola, Brenda. Me llamo José Antonio. Mucho gusto.
Brenda.
¿That's her name?
She's just laughing because you're talking to her.
Oh, lo siento.
Yeah, Brenda's her name. She's being adopted by a family. Where's your family from, Brenda? What's that? No sé.
Está, hombre.
My daughter speaks fluent Spanish, and I have my
can
kids
see.
translate.
Hombre, no entendés. Sí sé que es Bélgica, pero no me han dicho en qué estados.
All right,
Yeah,
so tell me. Hold on.
She was
What happened here?
she was born to a brother and a sister who who made her, and then her birth father. Hey girls, run! Go run! Do it again! Repeatedly raped her until the government took her away and brought her to us. So when we got her, she was 4. So she was being repeatedly raped when she was 4. So she has been in this orphanage now almost 6 years, and she's probably 2 to 3 months away from finally going to an American family.
Where's she gonna go? You don't know?
I can't remember the state. Do you remember where the Bows live?
Midwest, I think it's Ohio, Michigan, right in
Michigan, maybe Michigan.
They,
I can't remember.
there. Tremendous people.
Great people. They adopted a baby, and they saw her, and they said, "We're going to adopt her." So we have all.
And she's going to go to a farm, and he has all different kinds of exotic animals.
Yeah, it's a great family.
And the school district now has.
They pay for him to help ADD kids.
Yeah, so they bring kids into this farm, and that's where she'll be going. So what an
She'll do
environment.
great. And she's really done great. We've had her in counseling and different things, and I think she's been good.
Does she remember any of the abuse?
Oh yeah. When they start talking about it, they remember everything. And it's not just her. All those girls you saw downstairs, they've all been raped. There's not a single girl that comes in here who hasn't been raped. And the thing is, like in our state, in the United States, we have sexual touching, we have all those kind of things. Here it's just flat out rape. I mean, it's like, and you just can't imagine it. But then these little girls start telling you what happened.
All those girls were raped?
Yeah, all of them. One of them witnessed her father murder her mother. The other one got beaten with a chain like this thick from her mother and starved her and left her in a room. See, and the government brings these kids to us. But remember I sent you an email a long time ago and I explained to you how I can't take those kids anymore because there's no money to take care of them. It's just too expensive because they're not here for 6 or 8 months like the babies. They're here for 4 and 5 years. So you'd have to have sponsors who said, okay, I'm going to take care of this child until they can eventually be adopted. But that's a 4 to 5 year process. And the government's not changing that.
The city of La Antigua is home to conquistador-era ruins, cobblestone streets, and 16th century churches, a town seemingly frozen in the times of the Spanish colonization. Yet even this magical place has a bleaker side to life. Amongst the timeless beauty of the city's streets is a rising problem in homeless and abused animals. Fortunately, these cats and dogs of La Antigua have found an angel in expat American Sheenie Nielsen Ledbetter. She runs the Animal Welfare Association Rescue and Education No-Kill Animal Shelter, or AWARE. On a warm January morning, my guide and I visited her compound, known as Hound Heights.
So every morning, this is what you see?
A bit earlier. We start at 6. It's a bit dark.
And this is your view.
Sheenie explained how she came to open Hound Heights, a 10-acre farm near
I came
Sampango.
here in 1975. I got here 5 days before the earthquake. And I fell in love with Guatemala. And after a few years here, I realized that no one was doing anything for the animals. And we had the war happening, and I would see lots of suffering around. So I got involved in this about 23 years ago and started collecting animals from my home in Antigua. Well, what can I say? It just kept getting bigger. I had 30 dogs and 35 cats in my house in Antigua, and I realized that I needed more space. Antigua, I was outgrowing Antigua. So I had this opportunity to come up here, and we started looking for land, and this place became available.
How many acres is this facility?
10 acres. And when I bought it in mind to put it in a form where it could never be sold for